Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be dealing with a neighbor dispute straight out of a TV drama, but here I am. It all started about 6 months ago when Janet moved in next door. At first, everything seemed normal. We exchanged polite waves, made small talk about the weather, the usual neighbor stuff. But little did I know, Janet had her sights set on something that didn't belong to her: my garage. Let me give you some background. I've lived in my house for about 5 years now. It's a cozy little place in a quiet suburb. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. One of the things I love most about it is the detached garage. It's not huge, but it's perfect for my car and all my tools. I'm a bit of a DIY enthusiast, so having that space is a real bonus. The previous owners of Janet's house were an elderly couple who'd lived there for decades. They were great neighbors, always friendly but respectful of boundaries. When they decided to move to a retirement community, I was sad to see them go but excited to meet whoever bought the place. Enter Janet. She seemed nice enough at first. Mid-40s, divorced, worked from home as some kind of consultant. She moved in with her teenage son, who I rarely saw outside of his comings and goings to school. For the first couple of months, everything was fine. We'd chat over the fence occasionally, and I even helped her move a few heavy boxes when she first arrived. The trouble started one Saturday morning in early spring. I was in my garage, tinkering with my old motorcycle, more of a project than a mode of transportation at this point. I had the garage door open to let in some fresh air when Janet walked up the driveway. "Morning, neighbor," she called out cheerfully. "Busy day ahead?" I wiped my hands on a rag and smiled. "Just the usual weekend stuff. How about you?" She glanced around the garage, her eyes lingering on the shelves full of tools and the workbench along one wall. "Oh, I was thinking of doing some gardening. Actually, I was hoping to borrow a shovel if you have one." "Sure thing," I said, grabbing my garden spade from its hook. "Here you go. Just bring it back when you're done." Janet took the shovel but didn't leave. Instead, she stepped further into the garage, looking around with interest. "This is a nice space you've got here. Must be great to have all this room to work on projects." I nodded, feeling a bit uncomfortable with how she was eyeing everything. "Yeah, it's pretty handy." She said, tapping the shovel against her leg, "I was wondering about this garage when I bought the house. The realtor mentioned something about shared property, but I never got the full details." I frowned, confused. "Shared property? I'm not sure what you mean. This garage has always been part of my property." Janet's eyebrows shot up. "Really? That's not what I was told. I could have sworn the realtor said something about joint ownership or usage rights. Are you sure?" Now, I'm not one for confrontation, but I knew for a fact that this garage was mine and mine alone. "I'm positive," I said firmly. "I've owned this house and garage for 5 years now. There's never been any shared arrangement." She looked skeptical. That's odd. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, thanks for the shovel." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there feeling uneasy. I tried to shake off the weird encounter and get back to my motorcycle, but Janet's words kept nagging at me. Why would she think the garage was shared property? I knew I should probably let it go, but something told me this wasn't the end of it. Sure enough, a few days later, I came home from work to find Janet's car parked in my driveway right in front of the garage. I pulled up behind her, confused and a little annoyed. As I got out of my car, Janet came out of her house. "Oh, hi," she called, waving as if nothing was amiss. "Hope you don't mind, I needed some extra parking space for a bit. My son's friend is over with his car." I tried to keep my voice neutral. "Actually, Janet, I do mind. This is my driveway and my garage. You can't just park here without asking." Her friendly demeanor faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Come on, don't be like that. We're neighbors. I thought we could share the space when needed. After all, it's not like you're using the whole driveway all the time." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. "Janet, I appreciate that we're neighbors, but that doesn't mean my property is available for you to use whenever you want. Please move your car." She crossed her arms, her smile fading. "I really think you're overreacting. It's just a driveway. And like I said before, I'm pretty sure I have some rights to this garage anyway. We should be able to work something out." I was starting to get frustrated. "There's nothing to work out. This is my property. End of story. I need you to move your car now so I can park in my own garage." Janet huffed but finally relented. "Fine, I'll move it. But this conversation isn't over. I'm going to look into my property rights. You'll see." As she got in her car and backed out of my driveway, I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and disbelief. What was her deal? And why was she so convinced she had some claim to my garage? Over the next few weeks, things got progressively worse. I'd come home to find Janet's gardening tools leaning against my garage. Once, I even caught her son and his friends using my driveway as a basketball court. Each time, I'd confront her, and each time she'd act like I was being unreasonable for not wanting to share. It all came to a head about a month after the driveway incident. I had taken a day off work to catch up on some house maintenance. I was in the backyard, cleaning out the gutters, when I heard the unmistakable sound of my garage door opening. Alarmed, I quickly climbed down the ladder and rushed around to the front of the house. To my shock, I found Janet inside my garage, rummaging through my tools. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice rising with anger. Janet jumped, clearly not expecting to be caught, but instead of looking guilty, she just seemed annoyed. "Oh, calm down. I just needed to borrow a few things for a project." I tried knocking, but she didn't answer. I was livid. "That doesn't give you the right to break into my garage. How did you even get in?" She shrugged, still holding one of my expensive power drills. The side door was unlocked. "Look, I don't see what the big deal is. As I've said, I'm pretty sure I have rights to use this space too. The previous owners must have had some agreement with you." I had to take several deep breaths to keep from yelling. "Janet, for the last time, you have no rights to this garage. It is my property. You are trespassing right now, and if you don't leave immediately, I'm calling the police." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me? I'm your neighbor. We're supposed to help each other out. You're being completely unreasonable about this whole thing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this woman delusional? "I'm not threatening you. I'm stating a fact. You are in my garage without permission, touching my things. That's trespassing and potentially theft. Get out now." Janet glared at me but finally put down the drill and stomped out of the garage. As she reached the driveway, she turned back. "This isn't over. I'm going to prove that I have a right to use this garage, and then you'll be sorry for treating me this way." I watched her storm off to her house, my mind reeling. This situation had escalated far beyond a simple misunderstanding. It was clear that Janet truly believed she had some claim to my property, and she wasn't going to let it go easily. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the confrontation in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. But mostly, I was worried about what Janet might do next. Would she try to break in again? Should I install security cameras? The whole thing was giving me a massive headache. The next morning, I decided I needed to take action. I couldn't just sit around waiting for Janet's next move. My first step was to call a locksmith to change all the locks on the garage. It was an expense I hadn't planned for, but it seemed necessary given the circumstances. While I was waiting for the locksmith to arrive, I dug out all my paperwork related to the house purchase. I wanted to make absolutely sure there wasn't some weird clause or agreement I had overlooked. But as I suspected, everything was clear as day. The garage was part of my property. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just as the locksmith was finishing up, I saw Janet marching across her lawn towards me, a determined look on her face. I braced myself for another confrontation. "What's going on here?" she demanded, eyeing the locksmith's van. "Are you changing the locks?" I nodded, trying to keep my voice calm but firm. "Yes, I am. After yesterday's incident, I felt it was necessary to secure my property." Janet's face flushed red. "You can't do that. I have a right to access that garage and you know it." I'd had enough. It was time to shut this down once and for all. "Janet, I've tried to be patient, but this has gone too far. You have absolutely no right to my garage or any part of my property. I've checked all my documents, and there is no shared ownership, no easement, nothing. If you continue to harass me or try to access my garage, I will have no choice but to involve the authorities." She seemed taken aback by my forceful response but quickly recovered. "Well, I've been doing some research too, and I'm certain there must have been some agreement with the previous owners. I'm going to prove it, and when I do, you'll be sorry." With that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her house. I watched her go, feeling a mix of frustration and dread. It was clear this issue wasn't going to resolve itself anytime soon. Over the next few days, I took some additional precautions. I installed a security camera overlooking the garage and driveway, and I made sure to document every interaction with Janet, just in case things escalated further. About a week after the lock-changing incident, I received a certified letter in the mail. With a sinking feeling in my stomach, I opened it to find a formal complaint from Janet, addressed to both me and the local homeowners association. In it, she detailed her belief that she had legal rights to use my garage based on some supposed historical agreement between our properties. I couldn't believe she had taken it this far, but in a way, I was almost relieved. Now that she had made a formal complaint, I could respond in kind, and hopefully put this whole ridiculous situation to rest. I spent the next few evenings putting together a comprehensive response. I gathered all my property documents, including the deed, survey maps and records from when I purchased the house. I also reached out to the previous owners of my house, who were happy to provide a written statement confirming that the garage had always been solely part of my property. Armed with this evidence, I drafted a detailed letter refuting each of Janet's claims. I also included a formal warning that any further attempts to access my garage or harass me about this issue would result in legal action. I submitted my response to the Homeowners Association and sent a copy directly to Janet. Then, I waited. A few days later, I received a call from the head of the Homeowners Association, Mr. Thompson. He sounded both apologetic and slightly amused. "I've reviewed both complaints thoroughly," he said, "and I have to say, there's really no question here. The garage is clearly your property, as stated in all official documents. I'll be sending out a formal response, but I wanted to give you a heads up. This matter is considered closed as far as the Homeowner Association is concerned." I thanked him, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. However, Mr. Thompson wasn't finished. "I should warn you though," he continued. "Janet came by the office earlier. She was not happy with the decision. She mentioned something about taking this to court. I told her she'd be wasting her time and money, but she seemed pretty determined." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Thanks for the warning. I guess I'll just have to wait and see what she does next." I didn't have to wait long. The very next day, a process server showed up at my door with a summons. Janet was actually suing me in small claims court, alleging that I was unlawfully denying her access to a shared property. As I stood there, holding the summons and watching the process server walk away, I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, I was angry that Janet was dragging this out even further. On the other hand, I was almost relieved that this would finally be settled by a judge, once and for all. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity as I prepared for the court date. I organized all my documentation, made copies, and even consulted with a real estate lawyer to make sure I hadn't overlooked anything. The lawyer assured me that my case was rock solid, but advised me to be thorough in my presentation to the judge. Finally, the day of the hearing arrived. I put on my best suit, gathered all my evidence, and headed to the courthouse. As I walked into the small claims courtroom, I saw Janet sitting on one side, looking smug. She had dressed up too, in a smart business suit, and had a folder full of papers in front of her. The judge, a no-nonsense older woman named Judge Simmons, called the court to order. She asked Janet to present her case first. Janet stood up, smoothing her jacket. "Your Honor, I purchased my home 6 months ago, and at the time, I was led to believe that the garage adjacent to my property was a shared space between my house and the defendant's. I've been trying to access this shared space, as is my right, but the defendant has been hostile and uncooperative, even going so far as to change the locks without consulting me." She went on to present some documents, including her home purchase agreement and a statement from her real estate agent suggesting that the garage might be shared property. She also had printed out some old photos from the County Historical Society, showing that at one point, decades ago, there had been a shared driveway between the two properties. "As you can see, Your Honor," Janet concluded, "there's a clear historical precedent for shared use of this space. I'm simply trying to assert my rights as a property owner and maintain the spirit of neighborly cooperation that has existed in this community for generations." I had to admit, she presented her case well. If I didn't know better, I might have found her argument convincing. But I knew the truth, and I was ready to present it. When it was my turn, I stood up, took a deep breath, and began. "Your Honor, while I appreciate Ms. Janet's desire for neighborly cooperation, the simple fact is that the garage in question is solely my property. I have owned this home and garage for 5 years, and at no point has there ever been any shared ownership or access agreement. I presented my property deed, which clearly showed the garage as part of my property. I also showed the judge the survey maps and the statement from the previous owners of my house. Furthermore," I continued, "I have a statement here from Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, who owned Ms. Janet's house for over 40 years before selling it to her. They confirmed that there was never any shared use agreement for the garage." I went on to address the historical photos Janet had presented. While it's true that there was once a shared driveway, that arrangement was legally dissolved over 30 years ago when the properties were redrawn. This is reflected in all current property documents. Finally, I presented a record of Janet's increasingly aggressive behavior, including the incident where she entered my garage without permission. "Your Honor," I concluded, "I have tried to be patient and reasonable throughout this ordeal, but Ms. Janet's actions have made me feel unsafe in my own home. I am simply asking the court to affirm my clear legal ownership of the garage, and to require Ms. Janet to cease her attempts to claim or access my property." The judge listened carefully to both of us, examining each piece of evidence we presented. After we had both said our pieces, she took a few moments to review everything. Finally, Judge Simmons looked up, her expression stern. "Having reviewed all the evidence presented, this court finds in favor of the defendant. The garage in question is clearly part of the defendant's property, as shown by all current and legally binding documents." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but the judge wasn't finished. "Ms. Janet," she continued, turning to my neighbor, "your claim to this property is without merit. The historical photos you've presented, while interesting, have no bearing on current property lines." Judge Simmons continued addressing Janet, her tone firm but fair. "Furthermore, your actions in attempting to access the defendant's property without permission are concerning. While this court doesn't have the authority to issue restraining orders, I strongly advise you to respect your neighbor's property rights and cease any further attempts to claim or enter the garage." Janet's face had turned an alarming shade of red. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but the judge held up a hand to silence her. "This decision is final. Case dismissed?" As we left the courtroom, I felt a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. Sure, I'd won the case, but I still had to live next door to Janet. I hoped this would be the end of it, but something told me she wouldn't let it go that easily. My suspicions were confirmed as soon as we stepped out of the courthouse. Janet marched up to me, her eyes blazing with anger. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You might have fooled the judge, but I know the truth. That garage should be partly mine, and I'm not going to stop until I get what's rightfully mine." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. Janet, the judge made her decision. It's over. Please, for both our sakes, just let it go. She jabbed a finger at my chest. You'll see. I'll find a way to prove it. You can't keep me out forever. With that, she stormed off to her car. I watched her go, a knot forming in my stomach. It was clear that despite the court's decision, my neighbor troubles were far from over. Over the next few weeks, Janet seemed to make it her mission to make my life miserable. She'd blast music at all hours, accidentally let her sprinklers overspray onto my driveway, and give me death glares whenever our paths crossed. But the real trouble started about a month after the court case. I came home from work one day to find Janet's son and a group of his friends skateboarding in my driveway, right in front of the garage. Hey, I called out as I got out of my car. You can't be here. This is private property. The teenagers just laughed and kept skating. I was about to say something else when Janet emerged from her house. Is there a problem? She asked, her voice sickly sweet. I tried to keep my cool. Janet, you know they can't be here. This is my property. She shrugged. They're not hurting anything. Besides, that driveway is big enough for everyone. Why can't you learn to share? I was getting really tired of this. Because it's my driveway, Janet. The court already decided this. Please tell them to leave now or I'll have to call the police. Janet's fake smile dropped. Fine, fine. Boys, come on over to our yard. Apparently, some people are too selfish to let kids have a little fun. As they shuffled off my property, I couldn't help but feel like this was just the beginning of a new phase in Janet's campaign against me. I was right. Over the next couple of months, Janet's tactics escalated. She'd park her car just slightly over the property line onto my driveway. She'd accidentally throw trash into my yard. Once, I even caught her trying to stuff my mailbox full of junk mail. Each time, I documented everything and called the police for the more serious incidents. They'd come out, talk to Janet, and she'd play innocent, claiming it was all just a misunderstanding. But as soon as they left, she'd be back at it again. The final straw came on a Saturday afternoon. I was in my backyard, enjoying a rare moment of peace, when I heard a commotion from the front of the house. I rushed around to find Janet and two men I didn't recognize trying to force open my garage door. What the hell do you think you're doing? I shouted, already pulling out my phone to call cop. Janet spun around, her eyes wide with surprise at being caught. But instead of backing down, she puffed up with indignation. I'm taking back what's mine, she declared. I hired these guys to help me move my stuff into my half of the garage. You can't keep me out any longer. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Janet, this is breaking and entering. I'm calling the police right now. Go ahead, she taunted. By the time they get here, we'll be in, and I'll finally have proof that this garage belongs to me too. I didn't waste any more time arguing. I dialed cop and quickly explained the situation. As I was on the phone, I noticed one of Janet's accomplices looking increasingly nervous. Hey lady, he said to Janet, you said this was your property. I ain't getting involved in no B&E. It is my property, Janet insisted, but the man was already backing away. Nah, I'm out. This ain't worth it. He nudged his partner, and both men quickly headed for their truck parked on the street. Janet screamed after them, cowards. Fine, I'll do it myself. She turned back to the garage door, yanking on it futilely. Thankfully, it wasn't long before I heard sirens approaching. 2 police cars pulled up, and 4 officers quickly assessed the situation. Ma'am, step away from the door, one officer commanded Janet. To my astonishment, Janet didn't comply. No, this is my garage too. He can't keep me out. The officers exchanged glances, clearly realizing this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. 2 of them approached Janet cautiously. Ma'am, we're not going to ask again. Step away from the door and put your hands where we can see them. Finally, Janet seemed to realize the gravity of her situation. She slowly backed away from the garage, her face a mix of anger and fear. The officers interviewed both of us separately. I showed them all the documentation from the court case, as well as the records I'd been keeping of Janet's harassment. They took it all very seriously. In the end, Janet was arrested for attempted breaking and entering, as well as ongoing harassment. As they put her in the back of the police car, I heard her yelling, "This isn't over. I'll get that garage." In the days that followed, I learned that Janet's ex-husband had been contacted to come take care of their son while she was dealing with her legal troubles. I felt bad for the kid, who had been dragged into his mother's delusions. A week later, I received a visit from an apologetic real estate agent. It turned out that Janet's house was going to be put on the market. Her ex-husband explained that this incident had been the last straw, and he was using his legal connections to have Janet committed for a psychiatric evaluation. As the agent was leaving, she hesitated. I feel like I should tell you. When I sold the house to Janet, she became fixated on the idea of the garage being shared property. I tried to explain that it wasn't, but she just wouldn't listen. I'm so sorry for all the trouble this has caused you. I assured her it wasn't her fault. Some people just see what they want to see, I suppose. Over the next few months, things slowly returned to normal. Janet's house was sold to a lovely retired couple who were an absolute delight as neighbors. They even invited me over for a barbecue to bury the hatchet between our properties, so to speak. As for Janet, I heard through the grapevine that she was getting the help she needed. Her son had moved in with his dad full-time, which seemed like the best solution for everyone involved. Looking back on the whole ordeal, I realized how important it is to stand your ground when you know you're in the right. It would have been easier to give in to Janet's demands early on to avoid conflict. But by documenting everything, knowing my rights, and not backing down, I was able to protect my property and my peace of mind. I also learned the value of community. Throughout the whole saga, my other neighbors had been quietly supportive, offering encouragement, and even serving as witnesses when needed. It reminded me that for every Janet out there, there are plenty of good people willing to stand up for what's right. As I parked my car in my garage that evening, without a doubt, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The nightmare was over, and I could finally enjoy my home without looking over my shoulder. Sometimes, standing up for yourself is the hardest thing to do, but as I learned, it's always worth it in the end. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.